Hi, this is Colby Mead from the Colbycast. And you, you're so wrong, dude.
Ross, stop it. Just stop it.
I could not resist right there. I'm just too punchy right now.
He's the one keeping you guys out of bed, not me at this point.
I need you to take the controls.
Okay. Neil?
You've seen the show, and like us, you have questions.
Ooh, that was a good one, but try this one on for size.
No question should be left off your list.
Whoa. I got a crazy theory, but hear me out.
But you better have some spares.
Oh, that was one of mine. All right, let's do this instead.
With me, as always, is my friend and Card Squadron winger.
This is Greg Cass, a.k.a. Ion Canon.
We've recorded at home and across the U.S.
Last summer, we were from the Boston Common. This week, we're in Chicago.
This is day 3 of celebration.
The show has had many names, but the purpose is the same. Let's share some time at the table.
Ding ding, it's time for breakfast.
Welcome to the Breakfast Pack, a Rebel Base Card micro podcast series. A returning Rebel Base Card podcast series that asks more questions than it answers. Today on Breakfast Pack number 92, our flag means breakfast. We're talking about Skeleton Crew's third episode that debuted on Disney Plus on Tuesday, December 10th. Very interesting as an astrogation problem and a typo if the show and its captions are to be believed. Stay tuned for that little nugget later on. However, I'm going to break off and I'm going to introduce my co-host and Card Squadron winger, Gregory Cass from IonCanon.com, who is in the midst of grading papers still, or are you done yet?
Oh, no. I'm so not done grading papers. I have about 200 waiting for me in the digital files. So well, first of all, catchphrase time. Ding, ding. It's breakfast time. And I'm very excited to be taking a break from grading, not the least of which is because we have a very exciting guest tonight. And as we just confirmed and established, this guest is usually kept away from me by some kind of restraining order and only fills in when I am sick. Memorably, the time I came downstairs and discovered a furnace renovation had covered my studio in, pieces of my furnace, I believe. And then I thought I was going to get to podcast with him this summer to talk about Deadpool and Wolverine. And my long take review co-hosts were like, no, we'll take it, Greg. You take the week off. So I missed out on that, too. So, Greg, fill in the details of who I finally get to podcast with.
That's a better intro than I had. I was just going to say, hey, it's Colby Mead from the Colbycast, friend of the show, and I love his room. The thing I love whenever I bring him on is the room with all the Star Wars stuffs. Is much more interesting to look at than anything I have on my shelf. So, Colby, I want to say thank you for coming on. Thank you for being with Greg. Finally, I mean, good Lord, how many episodes? And I would say the Colbycast featuring Ross Holleben, because Ross Holleben is pretty much, it's kind of like, Isaac from The Love Boat when it said and Isaac, right? And then whatever. I think it's going to be like and Ross Holleben should be how the Colbycast title ends. How you doing?
Yes, I'm doing fantastic. I'm super excited. Finally, I was thinking, that Dr. Cass was dodging me here because, it just seemed like we were just two ships passing in the night. And I thought, well, is this on purpose here? I don't know. But yeah, I'm super excited to be sitting with you guys. And I always love coming on and talking and just seeing you guys is just fantastic as well. I'm ready. I have my breakfast beverage of choice, which is usually coffee. But tonight I've got my my strawberry quick milk. Like I like to sip on from time to time. So super excited to be here and very happy. And thank you so much for the invite.
Yes, I would love to unpack the strawberry quick because I did hear you talk about that on a recent episode of the Colbycast featuring Ross Holleben. That Ross wasn't on, but just featured. I'm just going to say that now from now on. But anyway, it's just great to have you both with. So, but if you out there, if you listening, are joining us from the first time, this is an insert series podcast, I swear that gets better, in the regular feed where Colby, Greg, and I are going to trade questions to each other that we've not talked about before about the latest episode, in this case, of Skeleton Crew. And since we're talking about a brand new Star Wars series, I'm going to remind anyone that there's going to be spoilers, and we're going to invite you, if you haven't had a chance to check out this episode, which I'm not going to repeat this title because it was long, we please invite you to come back and listen after you've watched said episode. Now, for this contest of questions, there are no points, bonuses, or lightning rounds, but there is something we like to call the Greg's List. Now, this is a selection of podcasts and other assorted media that we've ingested to see that they have answered any of our questions and then some. It's one of my favorite parts of the show as it highlights just some of the amazing work being done out there in the community. We hope you check out some or all and maybe find a new content creator you like and want to support. Now, Colby, you are on my Greg's List this week, but I am curious. Since the Skeleton Crew debut has dropped, you've done your show. Have you had a chance to listen to anybody else? And of course, you can always start with us, but I'm more interested in the ones that not us that you've had a chance. And what do you kind of like listening to?
So I feel like my show chased yours through the feed last week, and so yeah, I mean, you stole my thunder, but yours was the first one I listened to after recording the Colbycast with Caleb and Luke about episodes 1 and 2. So I even mentioned on that show how much I love when there's these weekly Star Wars shows, because we pick up this conversation. And again, the Colbycast, we don't only do Star Wars, we do all kinds of things, mainly because I can't come up with ideas to talk about when there's no new Star Wars stuff to talk about. So we go and do other things. But podcasts like yourself and so many others that do a great job week to week to keep it on the Star Wars they're excellent. But I just love the fact that we have new stuff to talk about every week. So yours was the first one that I jumped on because it was available. I think you dropped yours on Wednesday of last week. So it was, or was it even earlier? Anyway, it was very early. I was very happy to be able to listen to it. I'll be honest, I listened to mine too because I want to make sure I don't make a jerk out of myself and actually sound okay. And then of course, the old standard, the standard bearer, if we shall say, CWK is a go-to, of course, because Dan, and no matter who he has on the show, always have thought-provoking and wonderful conversation about Star Wars. So those are my go-tos. I just feel very fortunate to be a part of the community that puts out such an excellent conversation on a weekly basis. So I'm happy to contribute and to consume.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And yeah, it's amazing now. Coffee with Kenobi's hitting, was it 8:01? And he had Tom Gross on recently. They were doing their highlights of shows gone by and stuff. And yeah, just amazing the work they have done, and the amazing the work that you and your boys have done as well. I really like the dynamic between you and Luke and Caleb. And it's not one of those where you're not really quite sure whether they're going to like something or they're not going to like something. And kind of what's going to trip their trigger, as it were. So that's kind of interesting and I'm also a little jealous that you get a chance to do a podcast with your kids. So pretty cool.
Well, I always make a joke that two things. One, I say over and over again, I never know what's going to come flying out of their face. So you got to be prepared. I really don't. We don't talk about these things as we watch them until we get on air. We may do a little bit of a general here and there, but nothing too in depth. And we get on air, and I really don't know where they're going to come from. And then, the second thing is that I always make a joke. This is just my very extreme ploy to keep them talking to me. It's veiled as a podcast, but we have this weekly conversation, and now I've put out this week will be 190 episodes.
Wow.
So that is an incredible volume of conversations that I've sort of cataloged for myself, when it comes down to it, of me and my kids. So it's real joy. It's a real joy.
Great show. Dr. Cass, in the midst of grading papers, you can shuffle around to give that great sound effect. But did you have a chance to listen, read, or do anything?
Oh, bless your heart that you think I do actual papers anymore. They're all digital, but you don't get that satisfying sound effect. I spent the home commute today with Colby, but not recent Colby. I was listening to Colby and Ross talking about the John Williams documentary, yes. Which was a great episode, and I had a lot of fun checking that one out. I'm so far, what would that be, late October is where maybe I just passed election day. It might be early November at this point. It's somewhere in there that I'm still committed to catching up on my podcast. But I just also wanted to give a shout out. Star Wars Explained is one of the biggest in the business. They're another CWK level. But Alex went through, and my favorite video he made is he translated the Urabesh on every page of Wim's storybooks to kind of show you what they were talking talking about in the books. And I won't pretend there's anything particularly revelatory there. It's kind of what you would expect, but that's dedication, and it's well worth a watch for anybody who hasn't checked it out.
Nice. Yeah, it was one of the things that was nice about finishing, because we finished ours early. And this month is going to be all over the board. We're going to have a couple good weeks, and then when you start getting knee deep into December, it's going to get real interesting for not just us, but I mean any of it podcasters that are that are having to deal with the holidays, especially with the episodes that's going to drop on Christmas Eve, and you're going to be like, that one might be a little late, folks. We might have to put in a little filler, is what we like to call in the biz. But I was burning through. I was at a good clip, and then it just got off the rails. But making tracks, they started like, and sometimes I'll even sort them by like time and like get the shorter ones out early. And they had theirs for like 25 minutes, and I'm like, wow. But Thank the Maker also have been clocking in some great shows, Full of Sith, Colbycast, reactions, and then I was listening to Blast Points, which those guys, man, they just get on a tear about something, and you're just like, all right. I keep thinking sometimes that we don't even have rails, but sometimes they just go off on stuff, and you're just like, but what I like, guys, and I think you're probably picking up on this, is that the overall vibe has been pretty good. People are really digging Skeleton Crew. What do you guys think?
I'll just jump in. I'm having a blast with it. It's just it's a joy. It really is. It's a joy to watch. I immediately started to be invested in these kids. Sometimes, and I don't know if it was on your show or maybe CWK talked about it, how it can be hit and miss sometimes with the authenticity, or an adult sort of investing in a child role. It can be a little bit sometimes it misses, right? If we're being honest, these kids have hit the target every single episode so far. I think that they're just so genuinely fun. Their energy is incredible. I like all four of them. I am, especially like the rest of the world, infatuated with Neil. I love him. I just want him to be able to talk to Runa. Please just let the boy eat and talk to Runa. That's what Neil needs. But even beyond Neil, there's something about every character that I have just really enjoyed, and everything seems to be flowing so authentically as a story. And I haven't had to scratch my head and be like, oh, that's a little bit of a stretch. No, it's all making sense, and it's just so much fun to have going along the way with them. I don't know what the story has for us, and I sort of feel liberated by that, like, oh my gosh, is this going to have some massive ramifications? It doesn't need to. I feel like it doesn't need to, because if it is or if it isn't, it doesn't matter, because I'm just having a great time consuming this story with these wonderful characters.
Well said.
Yeah, I'll echo exactly onto that. It is really nice to be online and not see toxicity. And I think there were a lot of us that were afraid for these poor children ahead of time. And I've really seen very little. I mean, I have retracted from some of the other platforms. So I don't know if I was on the cargo landing clause. It went up the ramp, not into the platforms. But it is exactly like Colby said. I did feel like personally my reaction to Acolyte was positive, but I was constantly like, how does this fit in? What is it? Who are they? What's going on? And there's something really freeing about not having any of those questions this time around. I think we'll eventually get some hints. There were two moments this week. I thought we might be about to see Maz Kanata, because she's a pirate queen, and I thought we might be about to see Carson Teva, and I think the whole of the internet did as well. And my guess is he just had a scheduling conflict or something that day. I'm not sure. But it's okay. They don't really have to fold in, and they don't need a shout out, but the celebrity podcast Smart List, the Jason Bateman, Sean Hayes, Will Arnett podcast, had Jude Law on. And it was really nice to hear Jude Law say, like, yeah, Star Wars means the world to me. And when given the opportunity to go have fun, I was going to go have fun. And that fun just comes across in every moment of the episode. But Greg, you hate kids and good times and fun. So how are you feeling about this show?
Getting quite the reputation, much like the number of names that we hear Jude Law get this episode. Yes, I have apparently many moods when it comes to podcast, and yes, as a parent of two, I would say that that there are things these kids do sometimes. You go, at any rate, you're going, yeah, I've been there. But no, it is kind of fun because, even like having, I was able to share the first couple episodes with the wife. My mom sat in with me, rewatching episode 3. And it was just enjoyable. It's one of those where like it didn't really have the baggage. Now, like I'm looking at it when I'm seeing like, the third time through, and I'm trying to check out the droids and the X-Wing like, which ones are those? Is that an R5? Is that, I'm sitting there like, I'm looking at dumb stuff at this point. But, it's also when you're watching this, the first one is sometimes on a mobile device, and then, or you're kind of, you're half awake or something like that. And so it's really like you need these multiple viewings because there are stuff in there. And especially during the section where he's going through the droids, I'm like, I know there's Easter eggs in there that I don't get. And, I there's the ones I did get and the ones I was very, very happy that we'll get to later on. But it's nice because they don't get in the way. They're, if you happen to pick up something, awesome. If not, it doesn't impact anything at all. And Jude Law is just doing a fantastic job, especially this one where, SM33 kind of takes a backseat, and Jude Law gets a little more, FaceTime, and all his reactions are just gold. So yeah, you're really getting like, it's almost like with Andor where we got the writing, and this one we get Jude Law, and Jude Law just like he kind of chews up some of that. Sometimes he chews up the scenery, but you're like, yeah, it's Jude Law, man. He's just knocking it out. At any rate. That was your cue, Greg, while I took a sip of coffee. All right, say something smart, Greg.
Say, like Greg McLaughlin, Jude Law just oozes charisma everywhere, so he can do no wrong, and he can certainly. And it is a funny thing. I like seeing big movie stars in Star Wars. I know some people say if they have the association already. I heard this a lot about Woody Harrelson, right? In Solo, it was like, well, that's just Woody Harrelson. It wasn't, a character to them. But I totally bought Jude Law as the character whose name I always forget. Jod
Nanawood.
Yeah, and it's
he has
too
so
close
many.
to Jude.
Has so many.
It's true. I want to go with Crimson Jack because I really like that Easter egg. But
yeah.
Oh, that Crimson Jack made me all kinds of happy, but we'll get to that in a little bit. At any rate, all right. So Colby, since you are first up, you are the guest. I am curious what your first question is going to be. Lay it on us, and then we'll take a crack at it, and then we'll go right back to you.
I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball here, and I'm going to share with you guys the questions that didn't make the cut right off the bat. The first one is, why is Jude Law so dreamy? That's probably for another podcast. I was going to ask you guys, how do I ask my wife for an increase in the toy budget for more Neil collectibles? But we can do that one off air. Can we get a Hudson Hawk style Star Wars story called Outer Rim Owl?
Go on.
Almost done here with this shtick, but
no. Let's stay on that one for a while. See, Anthony, not just me. It's not just me, Anthony.
This question is probably more for David Motters, but why do I identify so strongly with a 10-year-old blue elephant? That's I'm very curious about that.
It's the overalls. You must be the age that had overalls at that time. Yeah,
I think I did.
And you like bubble baths? So I've heard.
And I like to eat. And hey, he picked up a blaster in that little thing today and sort of looked at it very longingly, like, interesting. I'm sure we'll get to that. The last one, though, is actually going to lead to my real first question. The one that didn't make the cut is, can we just skip to Canon connections? Because I feel like there's a lot there, and I just want to listen to Dr. Cass say really smart things. So those were the ones that didn't make the cut. The one that is actually official, and I'm so glad that I'm first. The guest always goes first. You guys are so nice. I just really want to know what Palmerish numerals on Proto-Republic artifacts means. I want to know what this is about. This was sort of at the crux. I'll have a lot of questions actually about Kim and her whole scene. This one though was one that really I thought was so interesting because as soon as she saw that emblem, and how cool is it that they're working like the importance of Star Wars logos and different. I mean, we have so many different ones, right? The Empire, the Republic, the High Republic, the Jedi. They all have their own little logos, right? And then there's Fern with her patch on her backpack, and that just set Kim off, and she immediately went over there. And I just want to know what the first of all, it's a fun sentence to say Palmerish numerals on Proto Republic artifacts. Great writing. Secondly, please tell me what this means. I really honestly need to know.
I mean, it sounds like it's for me. So I'll jump right in and say, that really for me felt like a moment where I could yell like called it. And I know we don't do that a lot, but I was talking a lot last episode about like I think we're talking old Republic. And so here's what I know. Palmerish appears by all accounts to be new, that this is not something previously established in canon. The adjectival form there would make me think this is, you know, a culture or a society's lettering. I think we're all very familiar with Orabesh being universal, but there's Sith language, there's a Mandalorian language, there are other Star Wars languages around, and it seems like this is being presented as one of those. But the second half of the sentence, to me, the key there is Proto-Republic, which has to date back to like the founding of kind of the intergalactic republic, right? That, you know, when we say proto here in our universe, which we assume is the same, nobody knows why this other galaxy has Latinate roots, but we just go with it. So it would be the kind of very like, you know, a proto life form is something that's not really a complete life form or doesn't have consciousness perhaps, but is on its way to evolving into such a thing. So a proto republic means this is kind of as old as it gets. And so you take that and you put it with these gems of the old republic that were then eventually destroyed. I feel like we're looking at earlier than we've ever really peeked into in official canon at this point. You know, that would be somewhere in the neighborhood of, when was Hu Yang turned on?
Was he 10,000 years old or something?
10,000? I mean, we have to be in that neighborhood, probably back to the James Mangold. Hopefully we're still getting it. James Mangold is about to have a very big hit movie in movie theaters, and I think we could use him in Star Wars. So I'll grab that book and confirm that date. But yeah, I think we're talking even older than I was speculating last time based on that very cool sentence you read.
And the fact that, you know, I was I was watching it on my iPad at lunch today, and I was taking, you know, I was taking shots of it with my phone because I was trying to copy and paste these sentences out because there's like no way I'm going to type that in later. And that's where I kind of found when it was like the episode title had Astrogation. But when I was watching it and she was saying it, she was saying Astrogation. And that's how I'm like, whoa. I think we're not the only ones that got a little hung up on all these words and letters. But I also like the fact that was, you know, Kim was so much of a nerd like us that her whole job was to stall for time, but she could not help herself by like nerding out on this stuff and basically giving him exactly what they wanted before she realized like, oh yeah, this could take a while. I mean, so that I think I love just as much. But you're right. When I was thinking like Proto Republic, and you know, part of the thing later of like how long has At-Aten been lost, as it were, part of what I like to call the Republic Dharma Initiative, as it were, because it gets more and more like lost every week. I was actually just kind of surprised that we got it so soon, and I think we've talked about that before. Everybody kind of like, whether it's like Mando season 3, where it's like, oh, he's gonna have to go to, oh, this is happening episode 1, okay, where everything's really happening so fast, you're starting to wondering now, like, they're rushing through stuff we thought was going to take the whole, you know. I think when you first see it, you're like, okay, kids get lost and they work their way back. But then this whole planet the barrier and all this creates this other thing I don't think we were really quite ready for, or especially given the suburbia. Everybody was like, no, it's a suburbia. You're like, man, this is a manufactured community. And now you've trying to figure out when this is. And then, so all these little things. So it's like they're getting us, they've got coordinates. They're heading back, supposedly. That, wow, we've still got a lot of screen time left. So it's a long way of saying, a long way of kind of getting to it. But it's kind of amazing that they're throwing all this stuff in. And it's, once again, it doesn't impact someone who doesn't have to know all this stuff. We nerd out about it, but it doesn't really get in the way, which is so cool. What about you?
I agree with you, especially about that part, because if this show would have been an adventure, a weekly adventure of the kids getting lost and finding their way back, I would have watched it and I would have enjoyed it, because it's in the Star Wars world and they would have done a lot of cool things. But now that they've introduced this sort of brand new, mysterious, it's not just about the planet, but now that we know that there's these other jewels planets of wonder, I think she called them, and all of them are gone except this one. Excuse me? What happened to the other ones? Why did it happen? Right? It's this whole other new overarching story that they've introduced that is woven into their attempt to get home. And now they have to ask themselves, what is home? What is this place, right? And you're talking about the suburbia and whatnot. And I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. I'm not going to try to steal your guys' questions, but the scene with the parents, that droid is just, nope, they're gone. We can't leave. Nobody can talk to anybody. And I'll see what I can do about getting an appointment with the supervisor. Just very much like, these are the rules. That's it. So, yeah, fun, exciting.
Greg, I'm just wondering when the comic's going to come out. Credit unions of the Old Republic. Now there is some canon I want to see made. Let's get on that. Let's get Charles Soule on that. Get him on the phone.
All right. I'm not going to derail us, but I grabbed the book, and now I've discovered something kind of interesting itself. So in front of me, I have the poster that was given out as promo for the Timelines book, and it says that 25,000 years ago, the Jedi Order was started on Octo. Then I picked up the actual copy of Timelines, and it says that 25,025 years ago is when the Jedi Order was started on Octo. Why would they have added the 25? What are they up to, and who's messing around back then? I have some questions. But 5 years after that would be Hu Yang powered up, and 25,020 BBY. But the dawn of the Republic is 20,000. So it's 5,000 years more recent than the Jedi, the Republic was founded.
It took a long time to get that T-Public store up, didn't
it? So to do Proto-Republic, you would think you'd be in that neighborhood. And to Colby's second point there, if that's how long this planet's been kind of isolated and spinning its own system. And I did think of Lost a lot as well. And one of the things that I think people hated about Lost is it took so long to get answers. So I wonder if you answered the question yourself, Greg, which is they're giving us answers quickly because they know people demand a little more as we go. So
I'll amend that saying it wasn't the question, it was what they answered in the last season of Lost that derailed it. Up until that point, it was going along just fine. But I think they introduced a bunch of stuff and they never came back to it. But we are moving along to get to somewhere, and I'm actually kind of excited because I think we're getting a lot more than we expected as far as this story, and it's creeping up on us. It's just one of those where it's like, wow. And I'm not really complaining too much about the show length, because I do think that it's like, oh, it's quite good how they're putting this together, at least so far.
So I'll keep us moving because I know that's the name of the game, and I will say I'm going to take the other big one that I thought was on the board. I wanted to talk about those things Colby just asked about, but I also want to talk about Jude Law, and I will take the big question. The big question was, why is he so dreamy, I think, but since that didn't make the list.
I'm ready to talk about that.
And then when you started the next Frodo question as how do I ask my wife? I'm like, is Colby trying to leave his wife for Jude Law? I'm not...
I don't really see a problem here. I don't anyway.
So I want to know, the big question to me is, what's his backstory, right? Is he really a Jedi? Is he just somebody with innate abilities that never trained? Is he just a total Kumail Nanjiani style fraud somehow, and he does have magnets hidden up his sleeves? So question 1, what's the actual deal with him, do you believe? Sub question 2, is this going to be a lightsaber-free show, or is he our best hope at having a lightsaber? Because it is rare for a Star Wars property to have 0 lightsabers. I believe Andor stands alone. It depends on how you define Darksaber, I think. But, it's rare. So is he really a Jedi? Will we see lightsabers on this show?
Go ahead, Colby. I already have my answers.
I feel pretty confident in saying no to the Jedi aspect of that, because I mean, he even came clean with them at the ship at the end of this episode and said, well, I never said I was a Jedi, right? So, but even before that, I'm like, we all know now in this era of Star Wars storytelling, you don't need to be a Jedi to be able to use the Force and be Force sensitive, which is one of the additions to canon that I've really enjoyed, because that really recontextualizes the Force very much so, and I enjoy it. So the question is how I also do believe, though, that they've established that you have to have some kind of training to understand how to wield and have the Force do what you are trying. I mean, he's literally floating keys across rooms and doing the Obi-Wan sound distraction thing down the hall, which I thought was a fun reference. There was one other thing when he turned off the lights. I don't think it's magnets and repulsor lifts, like Fern said, which I thought was also a fun reference. But the answer to the question is I don't know, but I'm excited about finding out, because maybe we will, or maybe we won't. But it makes him, even though Jude Law is so, I have never seen somebody pull off a receding hairline like he does, right? I mean,
yeah,
like
That's
he
fair,
just owns
that's fair.
it. He just owns that thing. But I just feel like he can be charismatic, and he can be the swashbuckling Crimson Jack, or I'm not even going to say his credit name because I don't want to mess it up. Jod something. I just feel that he is a compelling character that is yet another wrinkle in a very complex story that we've discovered over the last 3 episodes. So this isn't just a kids getting lost and coming back. Now we have the whole Atten mystery, but now we also have this other Crimson Jack, Captain Silvo mystery. Why is he a pirate? How does he know how to use the Force? I mean, these are all questions I guess we could just be throwing out there on our list. But if there's anything that I could add to it, is that I just think that it makes the show even that much more compelling with this type of a character. It is not just a scoundrel, right? But he's a scoundrel that can use the Force. There's some interesting information there that I can't wait to find out about.
I find him of the age where he could have been a Padawan or a youngling in the Jedi Order, and I don't necessarily think it's a stretch. That I do think he's Force sensitive, because I do think that with Nanjiani's character in Obi-Wan, I think we've kind of done that. And since there's not that much, I do think there's a little more meat on the bone if he is Force sensitive. But like Kanan and Cal and everybody else, you kind of had to fend for yourself. And or if you think like Baylan Skull, that a lot of these folks had to make choices. Some, a little more, noble than others. But I think that probably would have helped him in being a pirate and staying alive, because it's not a profession you have a terribly long life in. But to be able to rise to captain and things like that. But I do think that I don't think we'll see a lightsaber in this. But I do think that it becomes interesting if he isn't part of the Order and he was just lying. We already kind of got that, and I had a feeling that that there would be this whim, sort of like mental betrayal, that he didn't do what the, like, once again, they kind of like sped things up. I kind of thought that we would have this reveal of who he might be, the Crimson Jack thing, or Captain Silvo much later, but they already kind of fleshed that out. So I do think that if he was a part of the Order, Wim will be like, it gives Wim some things to kind of work on him throughout, and he could see perhaps what the Jedi means to Wim and what they probably should be, and he probably goes, yeah, I probably should, it gives him something, I think, to kind of arc towards. Otherwise, kind of like Han Solo, where they kind of just become good just to be good. I mean, like they kind of, but there isn't really a love interest in this, and so, but I do think that, I do think it kind of means it. But I also like the fact that I don't think we necessarily need to see a lightsaber in this, because I don't really know who he would be using it on except other pirates. I don't know, but I do like the blasters. I know that maybe they hit a little too close to home, piratey for some, but I like the motif. So I don't know. I think that'd be more, to me, it's more interesting if he is a part, but just young enough where, he didn't go Kenobi, and I don't know, or whatever.
Yeah, I was so as an English major, I was doing some ill-advised math in my head. So the dashing Jude Law is 51. So if the character is roughly 50, we would put that would mean he was around during the actual Jedi Order, right? There could be a connection there. But I liked your point about Haja, that we've been there before. And we've kind of been there with Reva. We're kind of there with Grogu, right? Like the kid who was in the Jedi Order and, faced the fallout from Order 66. We've kind of been there already a few times. So I suspect it's something like the Jedi never found him. Very much what you're both saying, that he had this innate ability and just never found the way to get to the Jedi. So Force sensitive, self-trained, but maybe that makes him a little more dangerous, right? I mean, he could have been using this for dark-sidey things. I'm also just waiting for the episode where he goes to Canto Bight, falls in love, and says, "Give my son this broom when he grows up."
Thank you.
Tell him that his
Thank
father
you.
loved him.
Where's
Because
that
he was
broom
so
movie?
moved by the relationship with these 4 children, right? He
Yeah.
Oh, and then
Clean
another
up the
wrinkle to that
galaxy.
is the Jedi Order had a lot of Jedi that did leave. So
Mm-hmm.
could one of those former Jedis be a candidate that they came across this person and sort of gave them some tips here and there, and he didn't use it for nefarious purposes, but he was using it in his piracy to gain treasure or whatever, funding, whatever the case may be. It's a really cool concept.
This question I had was much more interesting before Greg started taking us back a lot more thousands of years. But I will just say, just to kind of mention it, that I was really curious who the Republic, whatever version it was when this barrier was put on, who were they hiding these planets from, right? It makes a little more sense if you go High Republic, that, okay, maybe it was a little bit of a Nile. Like I said, this, I think more in agreement if she's saying Proto-Republic, that it's probably not. But it does it was interesting, like, who were they afraid of that these, that the planet, like the AT-AT and Credit Union was going to be discovered. But I think I will sneak to this question because I do have, it's this whole supervisor thing is giving me a great Wizard of Oz vibe. Is the supervisor a droid, or like the Great Oz, there ain't nothing behind the curtain?
It's Rhoda the Hutt. That's the supervisor.
Fair.
Or was that a question for the question? Was Rhoda the Hutt stinky in the Clone Wars, or was that a different?
Nope,
Is
that's
it?
right. Yep.
Yeah,
And
then it's
now to
def-
be played by Jeremy Allen White of
Yeah.
television's The Bear.
Great.
One of the hottest TV stars out there is taking on the role of Stinky. I don't know what's going on.
I don't know, and I don't care. It's just magnificent. Yeah, so it's definitely stinky. That's a great question, and you made me think. You said Wizard of Oz, and made me think of the scene with the old droids on Kim's observatory planet, where she comes out like a Return of the Jedi, which always reminded me of Wizard of Oz when they open the door right to the. Yeah, that's fun. That I am really fascinated by Atten and the entire society there. I shared on the Colbycast with our first episode about Skeleton Crew that the trailer. I never get worried about Star Wars. I just love watching it. So when I say a little bit of a concern, it's really not that serious. But when I saw the trailer and saw images that were so reminiscent of things we see daily in our life, I was like, how is this going to work in Star Wars? But the minute that it started, all of that was it just dissipated, because there is something wrong with this planet. There's something, or maybe something really, really right. We don't know. It's all about perspective, right? So I think that there's an organic at the middle of all this, not a droid. Although it would be fascinating if it were some kind of like supercomputer, like an AI. Ooh, that would be very timely, wouldn't it? Like that has calculated, every scenario possible and has just shut everything down using this nebulous gas to keep it off of charts and whatnot. I think that's a very interesting idea. But I don't think that it's anything evil. I don't get, because Utopia can go either way, right? It can be it's this perfect society, but it's very much not perfect. Oh man, now that I'm saying it, I just don't know. I don't know if it's something that it has evil motivations, or if it's just we need to protect ourselves from all the bad people out there, which it gets into questions about freedom and now I'm overthinking. But I think I'm just going to go back to it's stinky. It's Road to the Hut.
Fair.
I think I was going to go the exact same place, actually, because I was taught utopia is perfect place, but also can be translated as no place, as in no place can actually be the perfect place, right? So that was on my mind, and then you said the smarter part of that right away. So, Greg, this is why you can't have both of us on. It takes all my smart material. So I find that idea of an AI very compelling. They, not to get too real world, but when you hear people who are skeptical about God and their faith, one of the things I've heard is kind of a model of not really atheism, but like God turned on a machine and then he walked away, right? And so then all that's happened since then is like the creations of man. And I'm not here to debate theology or anything like that, but that almost seems like what we could be looking at here. There was some higher power who flicked on a machine, not knowing it would run for 20,000 years and that it would still be going and controlling these people. The great authority, the great purpose, and that all sounds very, Wizard of Oz came to mind. The Village, the M. Night Shyamalan movie, kind of came to mind. Like it's like a way of control and a way of pulling out these people, maybe for their own safety, quote unquote. But and last episode I mentioned Narkina 5. It feels very Narkina 5, right? They're competing to be the top student. They're competing to get the analyst positions, even though they don't seem to know what anybody's analyzing at the end of the day. So I think it is possible that it is, like you said, Colby, really not nefarious. Just we did this to start a process, not knowing it would just keep going, and that's where we'd be. So, Greg, I hope I didn't insult you, but what are you thinking?
Well, it's interesting because I was looking. We'd gotten some nice comments on a friend of the show on Threads, Far Far Away. Was getting a lot of George Orwell 1984 vibes, and he was kind of concerned. He was kind of curious whether or not this whole society was kind of built to, benefit like an upper class, like the Franklin Mint, as it were, and they just kind of go off. And I know that Kyle Scully was also, I was kind of wondering last week. I'm like, I think everything that Fern was saying, like these tall tales, I think there was a lot more truth in it than not. And Kyle was picking up on like, yeah, what if Fern's right, and if there's some kind of mine below the school where the planet's treasure is, and it is something where it's like, when you're thinking of how this place was built and the fact that we've seen adults, but we haven't seen really old, adults yet. And I'm curious, like, are we going to get some kind of Logan's Run vibe? But you start to think about the droids and stuff, and like, how can they keep this? To me, it's almost like, I think the droids are all that's left. I think there was supervisors and so forth, but I don't think, like some kind of classic TOS episode, but they're not here anymore, but it keeps going on, something like that, where it's like it just goes and all the droids are really minty fresh and all the coins are minty fresh, and it keeps going on, and no one's really, anybody that kind of gets out of line, they tuck them away, or maybe they throw them in the mines or something like that. But I'm the fact that was it the Fern's mom who was, what's her title again? She's like shoot, I had that there.
Carrie Condon.
Right.
She's
but
just such a great actress. That's her title. That's all she needs to be.
That's fair. That's fair. But even she, I don't think, she knew that she wanted to petition an audience with, but I was like, I don't know if she's seen the supervisor yet. So, she's works in admin, but she hasn't seen, or is prevented from seeing. So I'm like, I'm not really sure that there is one anymore, or at least maybe there was once. Don't know. I don't think there is now. At any rate,
I just want to toss in, because Kyle Scully, such a reliable friend of the program, sent really good thoughts, and he sends good thoughts to all my podcasts, and I am not a good person about reading them and remembering to bring them up. So since you reminded me, I do want to say he made me think a lot about Ready Player One. And the way that universe is constructed in the book and the film. The idea there is there's a big hunt going on for the Easter egg, so you get control of the alternative universe computer system. I forget what they call it in there. And the creator, slight spoiler, hid the first egg on the educational high school planets because the creator wanted all of the kids who had no kind of wealth and no prospects to have the equal shot at winning the hunt in the end. And all the Easter egg hunters in that movie and book are called Gunters, which is also the name of Jaleel White's character, which is awesome. So I don't know, maybe there's something there. Kyle had me digging out my copy of that novel and looking through it and thinking about that a lot. So that's a great book if people haven't read that book. The movie's okay, but the book is really fun.
Agreed. Yeah, the book is a little better than the movie. Colby, do we have some more? Do we have another good question from you?
Because I haven't asked one yet.
No.
We've spent a lot of time on At-Atten, and I think we could spend a lot more time on At-Atten. But I do have, maybe it's a quicker question, but it stuck out to me, and I want to go back to Port Borg, because their escape, and Fern even brought it up, was very easy. Was maybe too coincidentally easy. And I'm just wondering, I'd like to hear your thoughts on, is there something else going on there that maybe Jod / Captain Silvo has orchestrated? Even though it looked like it was difficult, he was getting chased and whatnot, but they got off of that rock, went back for SM-33, and then got off of that rock again. And by the way, Hondo Onaka's ship is ported there. If you guys didn't happen to see it, it's there. Yeah, nice. You can see it, and it's in the center of the screen on the lower end. So go for another rewatch and check it out. But the fact that a character brought up that was easy, is there something happening here, or do you think that this is just because the showrunners want to keep things moving and they're going to acknowledge the fact that it was easy by a character saying it, but they just want to keep the story going?
Um, well, I don't know if you all have seen this movie. In 1977, there's a film called Star Wars: A New Hope, and they escaped the Death Star, and they realized it was too easy. So I almost wonder if that feels almost like a little callback, right? But is it a callback because it's going to work the same way and they're being tracked? It didn't seem like anybody in the Pirates Bay knew that which ship the kids had come off of, right? They certainly knew at the end of the second escape, but hadn't. I don't think that anybody could have placed a tracker on it, so it can't be exactly the same. But I did have that same thought though, and my favorite Easter egg is Star Tours is parked out there. Did you see that one?
Ooh.
I did. Very small, right? It's very small in the distance.
Beautifully done. The ILM model makers are having a good time, clearly. So, so I think it might be more the second way you phrased it, which is they knew they wanted to construct it this way. They knew people on the internet were going to be snarky about it, so they almost just let the kids be snarky first to blunt the damage. The way Brutus, I think is his name, the wolf man, the Shistavanian, says, call a bounty hunter, that made me think, oh boy, we're going to get somebody cool. And I don't know if that's somebody cool we know or if it's somebody cool who is new or something, but I suspect an episode or two with some good bounty hunter action coming up in the mix.
I do think
Very
that sort of
compelling.
lends it to the fact that they didn't, because otherwise why would they hire out bounty hunters if they could do it themselves? Because you would almost think that Brutus would have tipped his hand a bit by saying get the ship ready or something like that without necessarily saying it. But it does sound like if they have to send bounty hunters after them, that it was a little easier, but I think it was, to me, that was more of moving them along. The thing that drove me nuts, and I think I have a set of parents here, is that why did the kids wait until they were in the ship to mention that we should probably go get SM-33? And I'm like, that is dead on if you're a parent going, really? You should have gone before we left. It's one of those things where it's like, that's very annoying. And I love listening to podcasts where it's like, I don't have kids, and have them talk about how their feelings about the kids. And a lot of this is like, yep. But at any rate, yeah. So I'm gonna say Colby. I don't think so.
And exactly, I'm not even tired. Smash cut to fast asleep. That is also a pure familiar moment
Dead
for
on.
parents.
Dead on.
Oh, and then Neil was snoring. I just love him. So cute.
Yeah.
Dr. Cass?
So I'm gonna introduce a recurring segment as we're in the speed round here, which is going to be the heat check on which kid. And I think we might know Colby's answer, but I'm just, week to week, I'm kind of interested which kid you thought had the best week. So that's not necessarily who's your favorite, but it's kind of which kid stood out for whatever reason. So heat check, who stood out this week for you?
For all of my adoration of Neil, and I spent a lot of time adoring Neil on the Colbycast as well, I mentioned the fact, even in the first two episodes when she had a smaller part to play, that KB may be the MVP of this crew in the long run. And I think she shined very brightly in this episode, especially with her hanging back and talking to Kim, making sure she was okay, and then got a little bit more advice. She's standing up to Jod. She's the one that said, no, we're not a partnership. You're working for us. I think it was her that said that, or maybe it was Fern. They were right. But anyway, KB, I think she stepped up to the plate and just knocked it out of the park this week. And I'm excited to see what more she's got, because she's got a lot to offer. So to answer your question, KB.
Nice.
The one thing I would say with all the kids this week is we had a complete Smuggler's Run moment when he was assigning tasks to all the kids. KB had engineering, right? You had Fern and Wim go at the guns, and then you had Neil. I've never been the pilot in Smuggler's Run, so I'm sitting there going, like I'm the same thing with Wim going, I want to fly the ship. And all you going like, just do is just evade. But I agree. Kim had a Lobot moment this week, and when her eyes opened back up, I was like, yes, that's a nice callback without beating you over the head with it. But yeah, I'm gonna say she was MVP of this episode. Had a great one.
Can't deny any of those things. My head is with KB, very much the tech of this crew. But my heart, I just want to shout out a small moment when they get in the turrets. Wim is kind of just in awe that he's getting to do that. But then it cuts to Fern, and she's got this like beautiful Han Solo half grin, like, yeah, let's do this. And I find of the actors, I am finding Fern to be the strongest, the actress who plays Fern. Lots of good swagger for that part, and I believe she's going to be the next Han Solo in this universe.
Good point. Here's a smaller one, and it's funny because I don't have much on Kim, although I thought the episode did a really nice job of introducing her. It was in the observatory moon. I thought the character was just fantastic. The CG on her was amazing. I loved her outfit, and I loved the whole. I gotta scrape the quote. Yes, my growing collection. I'm like, yes, as a collector. I'm like, yes, kindred spirit. But yeah, I thought I didn't have too many questions on it because I thought they did her so well in this. I love her as a character, but I am kind of curious. There was one little nod, and there may not be much here, but Jod seemed to have recognized the onyx cinder. Anybody have anything they can add on it? I mean, does he really? He was still kind of like looking around, looking for stuff, but he's like, oh no, not that. Anybody have any thoughts on this? I know it's kind of a half question, but it was something that they kind of left out there.
I picked up some of those vibes, but I looked at it in a different way. Not necessarily that he recognized the individual ship as the Onyx Cinder, because of his reaction was just like that, Luke.
That's fair.
That's what a hunk of junk kind of moment, right? But where I picked up on what you're saying, Greg, is when he was wandering around the ship. Clearly, he's looking, familiarizing himself. He must have done more of that when the kids were sleeping because he knew right where those gun turrets were, how to activate them, how to get the kids in there. So, one, I do think he spent time walking around, checking things out. He started using Dead Pirate's clothes. He had a wardrobe change for the action figure, of course. But I just wonder if the familiarity comes from just a pirate knowing his way around a pirate ship, because it's a pirate ship, right? So I think back to the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, right? Captain Jack, he's getting on any ship and he's at home, right? Because he wants to be the captain of a ship. Of course, he wants the Black Pearl, but he's on a pirate ship, and I think there's going to be a level of familiarity for a pirate of his stature. And now I'm talking about Jod again. Just recognizing how pirates work, and their ship is probably geared towards what they do. But the question that arises in my head along those lines is, how long has that ship been on at Aden? Mm-hmm. We just are these pirates of the same ilk as the current Star Wars pirates, or did they come from a different generation? And it's just another question that leads to another question, which is always the thing I have most fun with when I watch these episodic types of Star Wars.
Yeah, I will, I guess, technically count that as a steal, because that was my question I had down, is how old is this ship? Because if this planet has been hidden away for this long, is this a ship that crashed, maybe it was 20 years ago, it got to the planet and crashed, but it was buried pretty deep, so maybe it was hidden by the droids. But it seems like you could make a case this is a very ancient Star Wars spaceship. The engines using a lot more flame feels like it might be signaling that to me. It's not really that kind of blue repulsor we're used to. It's more of a, well, the Knights of Ren had the Night Buzzard, I think was the name of it, that smokes in space, which I have some questions about. But like, I do think that, so maybe it's just meant to look a little rough, but I think it could be a more ancient ship than we're aware of. I did also clock how he really knew, oh, I just have to hit this button here and a turret drops down from the ceiling. And okay, some of that stuff would be universal on a ship, but this seems like a very, specific kind of spaceship. So the only answer I'm left with is Jod Naywood went to Target back in October when the Lego set first appeared and got a little preview, a little sneak peek, and so knew his way around before the show actually premiered.
I'm telling you, Lego screws it up for everybody. But yet they keep getting the license. Yeah. Well, no, I think that does lend credo to Colby's theory that he spent some of that time looking around, pushing some buttons that obviously didn't jar them out of hyperspace like Wim. But I do think it clearly showed him was familiarizing himself, and I love the little second eye from SM33 when he's going, "They're from somewhere." And then he goes back around and then comes back and says it again. That was just a great moment. I just wanted to say. But at any rate, but yeah, he does. I almost kind of feel like maybe it's a legendary ship, a legendary pirate ship that hey, it's one of those that they got lost. SM33 didn't seem to. SM33 knew about Port Borgo, so it can't necessarily predate Borgo, but it predates probably everybody who was on Borgo, or at least because no one seemed to recognize them. But I don't know. Maybe Jude Law there spent a little more time in the space library than some of his in the captain's nest when he was still Captain Silvo. Hey, before we wrap things up, any more canon connections? Because I did have some Crimson Jack stuff, but if you had that already, Greg, go ahead. Or if you had any other canon connections before we wrap things.
We've hit a lot of them. So Star Tours was my favorite of the episode, as I shouted out. So the Star Tours speeder is visible when they're making their getaway. And I think that has to mean that come May, you can go to Disneyland and then you'll get to go to Port Borgo. I mean, it's established canon that the ship is there. I did really myself like among the droids, there's obviously the very obvious battle droid that gets to speak, but it's always fun when we hear a battle droid in the OT era. And a CZ3 droid, he identifies with a different call sign, but this is the kind of goofy looking face droid that is on the Sandcrawler back in A New Hope, and there's one of those laying there. And then the big one being Crimson Jack. So I'm sure Greg's main point is that Crimson Jack is an original Star Wars Marvel comic character. But I will just speak to the recent canon and note that Crimson Jack has come back recently. Ooh. And in one of his panels even says there's a bunch of people running around pretending they're me, but I'm the real deal. And so now we know who one of those people running around pretending it's him is. I guess he's not alone. So, Greg, I'll let you fill in. I mean, did you remember that name from the original run right away?
Now, I have been reminded of such because I've been picking up those UK Star Wars weeklies and trying to get back to some of the original. And Crimson Jack debuts in Marvel Star Wars number 7. This is October from 77. However, 7 is the first that was not from the movie. Like the original, like the first 6 issues of Marvel Star Wars was the A New Hope chopped up into 6 bits with some of the extra stuff. So everybody my age thought that they saw Biggs, a lot more Biggs than they did, but they were taking it. But yeah, you go Star Wars number 7, and Crimson Jack is who liberates the reward that Han Solo got for rescuing Princess Leia. So I think that's kind of cool because it's like it's like 2 pages in and they already lost all the money they made. And it's like, yeah, that's almost like, as much as it's sort of like Legends, it's like, this is classic Han Solo getting busted. I would say also that Crimson Jack had a very, fitting, it's almost like a WWE wrestler type outfit because he's got like the short shorts and he's got, so he looks like a luchador in this, and then he has his first mate Jolly. But yeah, he goes from from issues 7 to 15, and then is referenced like in number 37. No spoilers on that, but it was a really nice introduction when we went out from the comics. and we were going off on our own. And like you think about that time where it's like they had their restrictions from George Lucas. They couldn't do X, Y, and Z, but man, everything was. It felt like there was so much open out there. And of course, we get to meet, Jackson, the Green Rabbit, and all this kind of stuff not long after this. But I was excited to see Crimson Jack, or at least the name in it. And I love the fact that they brought it back, just like Valence in the Bounty Hunters books. And it's kind of fun to get these nods and everything we've seen so far from like the holiday special and all that. So it's fun, and once again, does not get in the way, but it just enjoys. It's a great way to get these little Easter eggs. They've done them very cleverly, and so forth. All right. Well, any final comments before? Oh, we need to get our any final comments before we do our Pringles can rating.
Not a canon connection or anything, but a fun little fact that I read that the pirate that Jude Law Jod meets when he's going back for SM-33, Benjar Prenick, that he's seemingly older guy who's had nice vibes, but he was voiced by Alfred Molina apparently.
Oh, it sounded so familiar, and I was trying to place it. That's really good. Yeah, another Ishi Tib, I believe, which is
another Ishi Tib.
See, and I kept hearing him and going, it sounds to me like Frank Mulder's talking to me. That's I was like, come here and have some tea with me, and then like tallest tell. What was the quote? I loved the quote. Oh shoot, where was it? Always a fire in your belly and a scheme in your heart. I love that line. I thought that was so cool. So that was a great scene. Anyway.
And don't forget that Alfred Molina is a friend of Lucasfilm because he is in Raiders of the Lost Ark. He may be a more famous Doc Ock, but he is a Satipo. Do I have to pause for my Raiders of the Lost Ark sound effect? Has Jen given you her soundboard?
No, but if you had Raiders of the Lost Ark on your Rebel Base card, bingo card for Breakfast Pack, you can now fill that. We used to have that as the free space, but we had to move it away. At any rate, all right, Colby, what is your Pringles can rating for this episode?
I think that I'm going to be consistent across. I've really enjoyed all three of these episodes, so I'm going to give it a 9, which I can never remember. Do you guys do like a 0.5 or anything like that, or is it just?
It's a number of Pringles. So a Pringles can is 126 chips. So you can do. No, I'm just kidding.
How do you know this?
All right, we use half kits. So.
I'm going to stick with my 9, even though now I think you guys should change it to 126. That's the top chip, right? I think that these are very solid. They're doing exactly what they need to do. I don't necessarily know that they're like Mando season 2 finale level blowing our mind kind of thing, or Grogu reveal type. Those are moments, right? And I don't know that we've had that kind of a sort of a Star Wars galaxy shaking moment, but every single moment of the episodes have been super enjoyable. I'm still engaged with the characters, enjoying where this is going, now very interested in At-Atten, and it's met every expectation possible. So I'm going to go with a solid 9.
Fair enough. How about you, Dr. Cass?
I am going to agree with the sentiment that I see this exactly even on. And I will actually say that that's kind of a compliment, because this in some ways felt like that kind of transition episode, like getting the new dynamic down and figuring out what this starts to look like week to week. And yet I didn't, like, my enthusiasm didn't dip at all. So I think I was at an 8.5 or 8 and 56 potato chips. Take
that letter grade system. All right.
And so I'm going to stay there. Where I agree with Colby is I want to save a little room up higher, because I think there's starting to be some real potential that I didn't imagine there. And, to echo what you said too, I think I always look for when this crosses over into the general public, and the Grogu moment you mentioned absolutely did, and the Luke Skywalker moment I think also got the general public excited. And I think Andor had the most success of the other series at really getting kind of normal, not regular. We're all fine. We're normal people, but non-Star Wars fans really excited about Star Wars. You heard critics say like, "Oh, this isn't just for fans." and I'm really enjoying myself, but I don't think I could tell somebody like, oh, you don't like Star Wars, but you'll like this. Maybe a kid, maybe a young person, but I want to see it have kind of that crossover appeal. Greg, where are you at? How many
Wait,
chips?
did you actually give a number?
8.5.
Oh, okay.
I started at
Like,
the number
wait.
and then rambled.
It was like 87 chips. All right, no. Anyway, I think that's it. You know, like I think I would stick with my 8 from last week because I think of what you said. I think it's consistently been good, but I do think that there's more to it. And of course, you know, hearing that there was going to be like a really, you know, oomphy episode 5, but I do think that they have laid out enough that I keep getting impressed. Now, maybe it's because we came in with a little lower expectations or not quite sure what we were going to get out of this because we really didn't get trailers until very recently. But I think it's been a very pleasant surprise so far, and it's been great on repeated viewings. And I think this is the one where some of the series we would like to have a lot more. You know, like with Ahsoka, we were kind of looking for longer episodes, but I think this really kind of works in these shorter episodes. But they keep throwing stuff in, so I'm going to keep it on an 8. All right, Colby, I know we got to wrap this up and get everybody out of here. I want to thank you for coming on. This is great to have you and Greg together at the same time. But until we do this again, hopefully it's not 92 episodes before we get you on again with the two of us. Where can people find you?
At the Colbycast, just Google it. All the social medias, the threads, the Instagrams, the X Twitter. Yeah, it sort of is like X Twitter, right? It's no longer Twitter, it's X. I did that by accident. Yeah, and I try to get as much out there on the socials as possible and engage and interact with everybody because I do love the off of the show conversation and podcasting is such an amazing community, and then social media is the extension of that. That's like that. We come along and we do all of our podcasts. We're like in the lunchroom, but then as we're walking out to the car, that's the threads conversation, right? And it's just great to be a part of it. So, yep, the Colbycast, we drop an episode once a week. We talk about Star Wars whenever possible, and a lot of other things. Like I think we're going to start getting ready to record an episode about the Interstellar re-release that should be hitting feed soon. First time I had ever seen that movie, and I got to see it on an IMAX screen at the Chinese Theater in LA, in Hollywood. So it was quite the experience. That's the kind of stuff we do, and we also have Ross Holloway. So
yeah, and featuring Ross Holloway. All right, Greg.
You had me until you Ross Holloway. Now I'm out. I'm not. No. And did Colby? Did you all do the Penguin when it was on?
We did. Yeah, we knocked them out in like 3 episode. We did like 1 through 3, 4 through 6, and then the last couple. So yeah, we have a solid 3-4 hours of Penguin talk.
Perfect. I'm just finishing. I was delayed, and I'd heard it was really good, and it is really good. But you know, like you're saying, I need a lunchroom to talk about it. But everybody finished it, a month ago. So I'm gonna jump on and grab those episodes because it's been really impressive, and I don't do that much non-Star Wars, non-Marvel TV. So, Greg, people can find me here. People can find me on Long Take Review. We have Wicked and Gladiator in the can. We have a Golden Globes nominations reaction. And I just saw the great new animated movie Flow, and I'm trying to convince them that we need to do a Flow episode. So PT and Jen are listening right now, and they're being like, oh, man, he's giving us homework. But yes, I am. We need to go see Flow and do a Flow episode. But and something I don't often plug, but the social media I love most is Letterboxd, the movie watching and rating show site. So I'm Ion Canon there as well, EYEONCANON, desperately trying to get to 500 movies by the end of the year. I don't know if I'm going to make it. It's going to be down to the wire, so people should watch me sweat it out.
And 2 hour long take reviews per movie. That's 1,000 hours of Greg. But I'm a comm major, so math is not my thing. All right, and I want to say thanks once again to Far Far Away and our friend Kyle Scully for sending those comments. And if you have questions, comments, complaints, and whatnot, send them to Colby. For the Breakfast Pack, you can find on the socials, Twitter, X, See reactions. I am listening. Instagram, Facebook, Threads, Blue Sky. Been putting a little more on there. Hive. And, of course, you can email the program, greg@rebelbasecard.com. All right. I'd love to have this go longer, but my wife just said, pick me up now. So I got to leave, folks. But we also have some other things we got to get back to. So we're going to be back next week sometime at an undisclosed time with still more questions that we hope somebody answers. Until then, for Colby, Greg, and myself, we now return you to your podcast playlist, already in progress. This podcast is not affiliated in any way with Topps, Disney, or Star Wars, nor is it endorsed by Disney or Lucasfilm, and is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. All names and sounds and any other related items are properties of their respective trademarks and or copyright holders here in the U.S. and abroad. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com.
That's it.
I must have spent a good 5 or 6 minutes wondering why my keyboard wasn't connecting. And then to find later, I'm like, you know what, kids, they make an on-off button for a reason. Well, I go from like my DualShock for my PlayStation 4 was not connecting or was not charging. And I'm like, I ended up getting another one off of eBay. And then I'm like, you know what, I'm wondering if it's the cable. And then finally I was like, you know what, I bet you it's cable because the second one's doing the same thing where it'll connect, it'll play charged, but it doesn't seem to be charging. You get the glowing orange. And so finally I was like, you know what, Greg, I think just get yourself a new $5 cable and I'll bet you it'll charge. So I've got it this weird, and I see the glowing orange. I'm like, it's cable. All right. So cables and on buttons, man. I'm telling you, on-off buttons.
It's your world.
It's my world. All right, let me go ahead and get this started. Yeah, by the way, we're talking about Skeleton Crew. Like a good host, I should tell people what we're talking about.